Hi, everybody. Lee Scott here. Thank you for watching and or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee. I'm super excited that you are here with me today to talk about life, legacy, and leadership. Before I introduce my guest today, I just want to encourage you to go and subscribe today to Leading with Lee on YouTube and all podcasting platforms, and just engage with this material. So my very, very special guest today, she is the Chief of Staff at Transformation Church. Y'all, let's welcome to leading the incomparable, the superstar that she is, the great leader that she is, Brie Davis. Hey, Brie.
Hi, Lee. Thank you so much for having me. That is I've never had an intro like that before, but so I'm still trying to soak that all in. But thank you for having me. I'm so glad to
You
be
should
here.
soak it in because everything I'm going to ask you today about is things that you have really accomplished and been great at. So, first of all, how are you doing? You know, we are still kind of in pandemic world. People have been calling it panini. I don't know why people have been calling weird stuff like panini, but we're still kind of in the middle of pandemic. But how have you been doing personally, and how are you taking care of yourself right now?
Doing well. This has obviously changed the world for everybody, collectively, but also individually. You know, it's weird having to wear a mask. I randomly always say this is very strange that we are now wearing masks like it's a normal thing for us to
Yes.
do, you know. And so, but personally doing great. I very much so am a strong believer in self-care and soul care. And so throughout this time, although it's been very different, my job has changed and just life has changed altogether. I've had a lot more family time. I've had a lot of family visit me over this past year in Tulsa. My sister-in-law actually passed away from COVID about a month ago. And so that, even though that was a tragedy for my brother, it brought our family together once again to just support one another and be there with one another. I think a lot of we've had a lot of quality time with my family, and with my husband over this past year because of COVID, you know, ups and downs, good and bad. And so, yeah, I think I'm doing good. I feel like I'm probably getting used to it now at this point. And so I'm feeling good about, you know, all that, the blessings that are in it, even though there's also, you know, trials and issues in it as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. I think so many people have experienced so much loss in this time, but also it has given people an opportunity to actually reflect in some ways that they really need to
For
reflect and think
sure.
about life in a different perspective and more healthy perspective.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
let's jump right into this because I think Brie, you like I told you before, somebody very special to me wanted me to share how much you impacted them, but you have been very instrumental in shaping and impacting so many people's lives, whether it is at work, whether it's when you're out speaking. So I kind of want to know, what is your approach to leadership?
Mm. Um, that's a very broad question. I would say the first thing that comes to my mind is authenticity. I think that my approach to let me first kind of share a little bit of my story and why I've kind of ended up there. I grew up in church. My parents found Christ when I was in kindergarten. And so grew up in a denominational church, have always loved the local church. Like
Yeah.
always, it's always been a passion of mine. I've always served. At one point, I was a praise dancer, a usher, a greeter, all at the same time, you
Weren't
know,
we
as a kid
all?
growing up in church.
Weren't we all
And so,
just doing too much?
yes, yes. And so I've always loved ministry and I've always loved leadership. And I think both naturally are giftings that God has given me to be able to communicate his word, and also just naturally in any room where no one's going to step up to be the leader, I will gladly take that role. And so that's just kind of naturally come to me. The thing that I think growing up that I didn't see in leadership that I would have wanted to see more of was just a level of authenticity, and sharing from a present day story versus a story that happened 20 years ago. The Lord
Yeah.
saved me from this, that, and the other, you know, 20 years ago kind of thing. And so I think I have a very deep passion to lead from a level of authenticity. Does that mean that I'm sharing anything and everything that's happening in my life with every person that I lead? No, but I do believe that I want to be the same person that I am in leadership that I am at home, and I think that I don't want there to be I don't want that to be disintegrated. I want that
Yeah.
to be I want to live an integrated life, and so that is important to my leadership
Yeah.
amongst other things. Obviously I have biblical standards that I believe come along with leadership, being both a leader and a minister at the same time, but primarily that authenticity that I didn't see as much growing up is something that I want to offer people that I lead.
Brie, I think that that's really good, and I think it brings a lot of perspective. One of the things to your point that you were talking about with authenticity, and I think that's really powerful, is that that's not something that's normal, right? It's something that we have not seen a lot in our generation, or it may be more common among people in our generation. But previous generations, that's one of the things. Your leaders were talking to you about the fact that they don't know something, or they might have messed up something, or they might have done something wrong. I think that that's a really powerful tool that people can use and learn from in order for them to move forward and be successful in their own lives. And I think we
Yeah.
need more of that. And so I think that's awesome that you do that. So, what are some of the lessons that you have learned and applied over the years as it relates to that in your leadership? Like, how have you taken some of those life experiences and said, okay, this is how I can do better, and this is how I can be more effective in my own life?
Well, I think number one, there's a big mind shift that happened to me maybe like 5 years ago as it relates to leadership, which is the leader is not the person in the room that has all the answers. The leader is not the genius in the room. A good leader, a great leader is one that can find geniuses in the room. And
Wow.
that was a major thing for me. I read a book, man, what is it called? And I can't remember. Liz Wiseman, I know, was the author of that book, and it was talking about finding the genius in other people. And I think when I read that, I was like, oh my God, this is so different than what I knew as leadership. In my mind, the leader was a person in the room that had all the answers. You got the questions, give them to the leader. Instead of the leader probing the other people in the room for questions and for answers and solutions and different things like that, because they're the geniuses in the room. My job is to help cultivate geniuses and create space for people to use the genius that God has given them. So that was a
Yeah.
major thing for me, because authentically, I did not have the answers to everything that I thought I needed to have the answers to. But because I thought that that was who I was supposed to be as a leader, I had a hard time admitting that. And I was just going to make up an answer or make up a
Uh-huh.
solution.
Oh, that's real.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I didn't want to admit, like, I actually don't know. And so
Yeah.
now I feel that freedom as a leader to be able to say, like you said, I don't know. But I believe that God has given somebody an answer in this room to how we solve that or answer that question or whatever the case may be. So I think the first thing was realizing you're not the end all be all as a leader. The second thing was I heard somebody say this, and I don't even know who it was now, but this has stuck with me, and it holds me accountable and realigns me when I get off as a leader. But I heard someone say that a great leader is one that the other person leaves the room, that they're not thinking about how great that leader is. They're thinking about how great they are because of what the life and the truth
Wow.
that the leader spoke into that person.
Yeah.
And I think that's still a major principle of mine, is I'm not trying to wow anybody with my leadership. I'm just being my God-given self, right? I'm just my personality, my gifts, my talents, my calling. I'm just being that. And what I hope is that someone feels inspired to be all that God's called them to be by being in my presence. Not that they leave in awe and shock and awe of who I am, that they leave in shock and awe of who they are, because I
Yeah.
help to pull that out of them as a good leader. And so I think that part of that is authentic. When we talk about authenticity, part of that is sharing my story and letting people know that even though God has blessed me with this role of chief of staff at Transformation Church, I am just a regular person that keeps trying to say yes to whatever God is saying in my life. So a part of that is leveling out the playing field and letting whoever is sitting across from me know that you're just as human as I'm human, and all you can do is say yes to the leading of God and hopefully end up where He wants us to be. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I think that's why when I realize that I don't have to have any answers, when I realize that I'm not the end all be all, and I'm not trying to impress anyone with my leadership, it helps me to be authentic. It helps
Yeah.
me to be real about whether or not I have an answer or not, whether or not I'm having a good day. And I can even, there's times I'm in meetings, I'm like, I am foggy brain today, you guys. I don't, whatever I'm used to giving to this, the energy behind, like, I can't give that today. Or authentically letting somebody know that, I didn't, when I have to correct someone and say, hey, you need to do this differently, being authentic with that instead of trying to sugarcoat it and make, whatever. So I think that all that to say, authenticity is a principle of my leadership. It's one of the principles of my leadership. And those are two different ways in which I believe I've had a mind shift that now creates practical ways that I try to do that within my leadership.
Uh, but yes, I agree. That mind shift that we have to have in this moment is so necessary and so needed, because so many people are out here trying to be who they're not at all.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to present themselves in a way that is inauthentic. And to your point, Brie, I think that that's helpful for people, and so much wisdom in that, to teach people how to be authentic. Because as you and I well know, we live in a culture that does not give people permission to be themselves. We have to
Right.
be what you want. Like, we have to be what the system or whatever organization wants you to be. And that goes back to a problem that we have within our culture. A lot of us don't know who we are. And so we're trying to
Right.
validate ourselves by, if we're part of this organization, that gives me identity. If I do
Yeah.
all these things, that gives me identity. And we're coming to learn that, like, that's not the way it's
Yeah.
supposed to be done.
I I 100% agree. I will say this personally, in my life and in my leadership, there are two people that I study the most in order to help me be who I need to be. The first person is God. Like, I'm in my
Well,
word studying who He
tell
is, His character,
somebody.
his patterns, all of those things. The second person is Brie. I study
Hmm.
myself.
Wow.
So any personality assessment I can take, I'm going
Wow.
to take it because it
Wow.
helps me to know who I am and how I present to the people around me. Because oftentimes we have an idea of who we are, but we don't fully know that until we've, allowed community in to tell us who we are,
Hmm.
or taking some different tests or whatever to be able to see, oh man, my personality might rub people this way and I not even know it. Like,
Hmm.
trying to learn my emotional intelligence. How do I make people feel when I walk into the room? How do I make people feel? And now that's not to say that I have a quick fix for all of those things and I have a way to make everybody like me. That's not it at all. I just know now when I come into a room, this is what comes into the room with me. It is a part of that too, is studying my own history, my own story, my own childhood, my
Wow.
birth order, my parents and their history, all of that, because everywhere I go, whether that is in a meeting, whether that is on platform at church, whether that's in the bedroom with my husband, all of that comes with me.
Yep.
All of me comes with me everywhere. I don't get to, we may think we're compartmentalizing ourselves. We got to work me and a home me. No, 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 no. It's all going to leak out eventually. So that's why it's important to study you, because if you're not self-aware, you are automatically in self-deception. Automatically. If you're not
Run that
aware,
back. Run that back.
yeah.
That's good.
If you're not self-aware, you're automatically in self-deception. You
Wow.
have an idea because, see, we live with
Yeah.
ourselves all our lives, so we think we know ourselves really, really well just because we've been with us for so long.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we know ourselves well. And it's
Right.
not until you actually study you to know. When we say, "Oh, just be yourself," to people, like, be authentic. Sometimes folks don't know where to go with that
Mhm.
because they have no idea who they are. And so, and I don't think any of us do until we actually investigate and evaluate, who am I? You know, my tone, my patterns, my habits, all of the different things that we want to know about God and in his fullness. That's the same thing that we should want to know about ourselves.
Oh, Brie, I can so go there with you because that's so real. Like
Yeah.
it is, it is super important that people do introspection. And
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. Like, one of the things that I had to do in undergrad, my undergrad is in leadership, but it, I had this, my degree was kind of weird. But one of the leadership classes I had to take, we did a lot of those assessments. We had a lot of conversations about how we are communicate information. We took the DISC test. We were really popular in college, was things like the Enneagram. Like everybody's into the Enneagram, in the last few years, and that has become a big thing. I would have conversations with people about Myers-Briggs and all these assessments, giving people opportunity to really, really evaluate themselves. And at the end of the day, you can't get locked into where you're not able to grow. Sometimes people use the
Right.
personality thing as an excuse to be trash, but
Yes.
they're
Yes.
about helping you develop more character and learn more about yourself
Yes.
and be more effective in it, right? But yeah,
Yes.
like that learning about yourself and then ultimately trusting God to reveal to you how you communicate in the world is so powerful and profound. And I have to move on, and I have more questions to ask you because we can have a whole conversation about that beyond this particular moment, because that is a real thing and people need to learn that. So just shifting gears
Yes.
a little bit, you are
Okay.
currently managing a global entity. Okay. You have a role in shaping, like, what Transformation Church, like, people know Transformation Church. It's funny because I will tell you, there are people that are back in my hometown, there are people that I have met through organizations or different things like that. And they might ask me, just randomly ask, what church you go to? I'm like, Transformation Church. They're like, really? Oh my God, I love it. Like TC is touching the world, but Brie, you have been there long enough to know how TC was before it has grown into this. So my question for you is, what are some of the ways that you have learned to manage success? Because TC in a way was like a startup company, and in a
Right.
3 or 4 year time, it became a quote unquote multi-billion-dollar company. Like,
Mhm.
how are you learning to manage success, and what does that look like in your leadership?
Yeah. Um, the thing about what's happened at Transformation Church is that it's happened really, really fast. And we were not prepared for it when it all happened. And yet, and still, obviously, God allowed it to happen. So there is some type of preparation that happened within us that we weren't aware of, maybe. All that to say, I believe that there's two things that I have learned from the success of Transformation Church. And I keep doing this because I believe anytime you're in the will of God, you're successful. And whether
Yeah.
that's five
Oh,
people in your
that's yeah.
ministry or 5 million people.
Right.
But I know other people see it as, oh, they're successful now because of all these
Right.
people that are interested in what's going on at TC. We were successful before. It was
Right.
just to a lot less people, but we were smack dab in the middle of God's will. So anyway, just to explain that. So the thing that I think, two things is knowing that a lot is going to change, and then there should be a lot that stays the same.
Yeah.
With success, with any type of increase in influence, a lot's going to change. Like our systems have changed tremendously. What we offer, what services we provide as an organization, as a church, whoever may be watching this, your company, all those things are going to change because now you have to implement things that are scalable to the amount of people that are interested in your product or your business or your church or whatever the case may be. So a lot of things have changed. How we do small groups has changed. How we hire people has changed. We have now a 4-level interview process to get on staff at Transformation Church. And the reason is because before, I mean, I didn't even have an interview for my job. It was like Pastor Mike pulled me into the office and he's like, "Hey, you want a job here?" I'm like, "Absolutely." He's like, "You got it." And so that was almost 9 years ago,
Wow.
that's totally different now. Our systems have changed just because of the increase of influence that we have now. However, there should be some principles that never change.
Yeah.
So the principle of prayer, in our culture, the principle of servanthood in our culture, generosity, different things that make up who we are, the DNA, the core of who we are, those don't change because we have more people interested in what's happening at Transformation Church.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a major thing, is that you have to know, I read this book. Gosh, I'm really bad with book names today. I don't know why, but
It's
I
fine.
read this book. It's something about highly effective people, okay? And
Oh,
somebody's gonna
yes.
know because it's a very
Yes. I
popular
know what
book.
book you're
Okay.
talking about.
Okay. One of the principles in that book is to write your own eulogy, basically. Like, what do you want people to
Wow.
say at the end of your life? And how do you alter your life and align your everyday life in order to see those things now? If you want at the end of your life someone to say that you're a person with integrity, then that means now you have to be that person. So, with that in mind, with our church, and what I would suggest to anybody else in leadership is, what are the things about you that at the end of your time in that leadership that you want people to say about you?
Yeah.
That's what you have to implement now. Those are the unchangeable things.
Yeah.
Those are things that no one gets to mess with, no matter how successful, failure, success, nothing gets to mess with those things, because those are the principles that you live by. And so for us, that's been a major thing for my personal leadership. There's a lot that's changed. I now have to know how to lead several different personality types, different stories. I went from leading just a couple of people on volunteer teams, and now we have a staff and interns of 87 people on staff, and between staff and interns. And technically, even though I'm not the direct supervisor of those people, they're all under my management. So a lot of things in me have had to change because of that growth. However, there's certain things that will never change about me, because I believe those are the principles, the foundation of who God's called me to be as a leader. And so it's knowing those two things, that, what are the things that are unchangeable, and what are the things that are literally going to have to change because of this growth that you've experienced.
Yeah. Brie, that's a great answer. There's such wisdom in what you said and how people could really think about it. And kind of staying there for a little bit, because you said something about fundamentals. And I think for a lot of leaders, that is a problem.
Yeah.
And maybe we're seeing it more now because we're seeing so many people get successful really fast, but they
Right.
never actually ask themselves, what do they stand for? What do they believe? What are your thoughts about how important it is? And I know you kind of said it already, but kind of talk to me a little bit more about, how do you develop some fundamentals? How
Yeah.
do you talk about or think about principles? Like for some people, that's like, okay, you're saying that, but if my goal is just to make money in my company, I don't, how do you
Yeah.
do that thing at any
I
scale?
think, and this may be different for someone else. Obviously, I am a believer. So a lot of my fundamentals and principles are going to come from the word of God, from the Bible, because I believe in those principles and I want to live my life by them. So for me, there's three things that are going to help me decide whether or not this is a fundamental, and I love that word that you use, the fundamental for my life. The first one is, does it glorify God? That's number one. Like, if it's something that's going to make, if it's something that takes glory from him, then I don't want to do that. That's
Yeah.
not a fundamental of my life. The second thing is, does it serve others? Because I do believe that our principles and our fundamentals in life should be, for the sake of others. Like, someone else should get something from me being in the space. If I'm in the
Yeah.
room, somebody else should be getting something, because I believe that God's called all of us to be gifts to the people
Yeah.
around us, right?
Yeah.
So, does it glorify God? How does it serve others? And the last thing is, does it make me feel fully alive? And
Ooh.
I think a lot of times people don't, they skip that part, because especially believers, right? Like we're trying to make God look good and we're trying to make people think good about us, right? So oftentimes we neglect our own needs and our own desires because we're trying to be whoever for God and for people, right?
Yeah.
But in between God and people is me. And so I want things that Jesus said, I've come that you live life and life to the full, an abundant life. That means whatever I am putting my hands to do, whatever I am operating in my life, I want it to be something that makes me feel fully alive. Like
Yeah.
I feel like I am being all of who God called me to be by being in this space, doing this thing, having these conversations, or whatever the case may be. So I think that, and for certain people, that's different things. Somebody needs creativity in their life, in their leadership, in their job, in their
Yeah.
home, all the time to feel fully alive.
Yeah.
Somebody needs that. Somebody else needs simplicity to feel fully alive. And that's me. I'm that person. So like I want to get it down to the simplest form because that makes me feel like okay, I can move here. Like I like this space, you know? For
Yeah.
somebody else, that may mean order. For somebody else, that may mean free flowing. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
you have to know. That's why I say you have to know yourself, because those principles and those fundamentals are going to be a part of what it is that you offer this world. But you have to know what makes you feel fully alive. So I think that helps me to find principles and fundamentals that I want to live by. Does it glorify God? Does it serve and help others? And does it make me feel fully alive?
Yeah. Oh, I love that answer.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very freeing to understand that, like, y'all, if somebody's gonna know this basketball reference, but I'm talking to Tim Duncan right now. Miss fundamentals. I mean, just great fundamentals. But but
So
you're
funny.
right.
I only know that example because somebody used that in church one time, and I was like, "Oh, okay." I otherwise would not even know who you're talking about. Okay.
I get it. It's cool. It's cool. But definitely, I mean, that's such wisdom in that. And that actually leads really well into my next question, because you work in a very, very, very demanding space, right? How are you taking, obviously you take your whole life with you, right? Everywhere you go. But how are you maintaining space for R&R and maintaining
Yeah.
space for just treating yourself in this high stress time and navigating it? How are you doing that well?
Yeah. Well, first, let me say that naturally, I do not know how to do that well. I'm a one on the Enneagram. I am
Oh
type A
Lord.
personality, very much so go, 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 get it done, got a to do list for everything. Kind of just very task oriented personality. And so I have had to be very, very intentional about making sure that I'm having rest and play in my life. And sometimes, I have to realign myself because I get into work mode and I forget that's, necessary. So the first thing was we were introduced to the principle of Sabbath maybe 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago at our church from Pastor Robert Morris at Gateway Church. And that changed my entire life. When I learned that there was a commandment, literally one of the 10 commandments that I have been ignoring all of my life, I realized that I was missing out on rest that was completely ordained and created for me.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing. I practice Sabbath in my life. Every Friday and or Saturday, I Sabbath, meaning I do no work, like no, and I'm probably not as hardcore as like someone in the natural, the original tradition of this, like they
Yeah.
wouldn't cook or anything like that. Not that, but I definitely do no church work. If there's anything that, I have on my to-do list that I didn't get finished in that week, I didn't get it finished in that week. I don't start back until Sunday. And so that's a major thing for me. The other thing is just knowing kind of I'm an introvert. And so there's a part of, but my job requires me to be an extrovert. So I'm seeing people all day. One thing that's been different over this past year is we're not back in-person service yet. So that's a little bit different. It was a little bit gleeful for me when we had that time away.
Listen, I'm real. I'm with you. Brie, when I tell
You
you
know,
I'm so
it's
with
gonna
you,
sound bad to anybody if I goes to our church, but I like me time, And
yes,
so being an introvert, that means I'm re-energized by time alone.
yeah,
So Aaron and I don't have kids right now. And so it's very easy for me to be able to do that. But every weekend I have probably a 12 to 24 block of time because my husband works on the weekends to just have time by myself. I can decide what I want to do with that. If I want to be with a small group of friends or one friend, but usually I am by myself because that is what re-energizes me.
yeah,
And then I just think knowing what re-energizes you is important. And
yeah,
so for me, quiet time, having a bath, going for a drive, getting
yeah,
some ice cream, all those things help me feel fully alive. And so I do those as often as I can. But I will say that the number one thing is having that 24-hour block of time that I do not do any work has helped to realign me week by week to the fact that God has asked us to rest.
yeah,
And rest is, I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna leave it alone because it's definitely, like, everybody on staff at Transformation Church knows this is my topic. Like, I love to talk about Sabbath, rest, and all that because it's honestly just it's totally changed my entire life.
yeah,
But rest is when I physically rest, when I make sure I'm getting enough sleep at night, which I don't play up on my sleep. I'm getting enough sleep at night, take my Sabbath, all those different things. It's a physical representation of spiritually how I'm supposed to live in relationship with God.
mm,
I can be busy
yeah,
and rested at the same time
yeah,
because rest is just trusting that there is someone bigger and better than me that has all the answers and has all this figured out that I
yeah.
don't have to be anxious or worried
Wow,
about it. And
wow,
so when I take a nap on my Sabbath, I'm doing nothing but personifying almost, this rest that we're supposed to have in Christ, which is trusting that he has the answers and everything that we need is in him.
yeah,
So it's a smaller picture of a bigger picture to
yeah,
me.
yeah. Oh,
Um,
there's so many parts I can just pick out and make
I,
you
you
talk.
know, I could go on and on about that because I love the topic. I think that I believe that Jesus went to the cross and he broke his body so I didn't have to break mine. That God's not asking me to break my body to work. He's
Yeah,
not asking
Brie.
me to lose sleep. He's not asking me to live unhealthy. He's not asking me to work 7 days a week when he only works 6 in creating the entire universe. Like, he's not asking for that.
Brie,
He's
don't you,
asking me to
you just
he's
low key just
asking me
sneak the
to
preach.
rest in him. This is my topic, Lee. This is my this I believe in it. I
Yeah,
believe
yeah,
in it.
yeah.
So
I'm gonna let you go because that's a whole word and we ain't about this is not what we have time for. But I only think I was gonna comment on that I is that's so healthy. And I real talk, Bree, I struggle with that because
yeah.
my Enneagram type is I'm a 2 wing 3, and that 3,
Mm.
that
That three
achiever,
strong, right?
woo, yes, that brother is like, who needs sleep? Sleep is for people who can't accomplish anything.
Yes.
Like, it's
Yes.
strong, and the two of me is like, okay, okay, I need to help everybody, and
Yes.
it's like, oh,
Yes.
I need to help people, so I guess I'll just
Mhm.
break my. And I'm like, bro, like, what are you doing? And I have struggled with that a lot, and so even there may be some people who say to themselves, like, I may not have time for 24 hours, but to your point, I think you're right. Is you have to force yourself and push yourself to, if it's not 24 hours, give yourselves 2 hours. Give
Yeah.
yourselves an hour
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
something that like recharges you.
Yes. I am a very black and white personality. So this is against everything that I naturally feel, but I do believe that you can phase your way into Sabbath. My black and white mind wants to say, well, do you phase your way into not murdering people and not lying? Because those are also commandments. But you
Whoa,
phase your way, we were interviewing. I'm just saying that's just kind of how my mind
it's
works.
honest.
But
Listen, it's honest. I'm okay
we
with
were
you being honest.
interviewing, yeah, we were interviewing somebody the other day and we asked about Sabbath. And she said, well, if that's what your organization believes, I will make that, a part of my work week, a part of my life, my schedule, whatever the case may be. And I was like, yes, our organization does believe that, but we also believe in the 10 Commandments. And if you tell me, I said, it's just like saying to me, well, if your organization doesn't believe in lying and idolatry, then okay, yeah, I can do that. Like, no. It's not an organization thing unless you consider your relationship with God an organization. Like it is a
No,
God
that's real.
principle.
No, that's real.
And so I do believe you can phase your way into it. I believe in progression, not perfection.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I want to challenge someone when they've been phasing for months into it, or phasing for years, or even phasing for weeks into it, to say, this is going to require you to organize your work week and actually manage your time well. This is going to require you to be proactive so that you aren't running around like a chicken with your head cut off when you start work again. This is going to require that you even plan your Sabbath. What are the things that you want to do? What are the things that bring you delight and just make you feel energized and alive? Those are the things that you want to do on that Sabbath, And so it does require a level of planning and organization,
Mhm.
but to me, it is as serious as lying, idolatry, murder, all those things, because it was a commandment of God.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
I just felt my life came for it. It is what it is. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to
The
look at that.
goal is 24 hours.
Yeah.
Start wherever you need to, but the goal is 24 hours.
Yes. And listen, I trust me. I know my life is extremely imbalanced right now with going to grad school. Like literally, we're going to grad school, working full time, trying to, doing leading and all this other stuff. I'm like, how
Yeah.
I know I don't have time for myself, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to figure that out. To your point though, and I'm going to move on, but to your point, it made me think about two like political world leaders. Winston
Mhm.
Churchill was known for painting. Like
Hmm.
he, even while he was
That's
prime
amazing.
minister, literally one of the things that he did to rest and recharge, he went and painted in his backyard. He
Yeah.
literally I don't know if they still have
Yeah.
portraits or whatever of that stuff that he painted, but he literally would do that in the middle of wars. This man
Yeah.
was taking time to go paint, and that just just having something like it made me think about. I think I was watching something or listening to somebody talk about this. The importance of if you use one part of your brain, then the way you recharge is using the other part. So if I'm sitting at a computer
Wow.
all day and I'm always using the analytical aspect of my brain, I need to probably incorporate drawing or gardening
Yeah.
or doing something else with my hands because that gives me a way to rest that part of
Yeah.
myself and be able to reactivate and engage in some ways. And so, I promise you, as soon as I get a house, I'm getting a garden. I just, listen. Oh, trust me. Real talk. Like I realized for me, and this is not for everybody. I'm from the
Yeah.
South. I'm from Mississippi, so I'm used to being in nature. I love nature, even though I don't get out in it as much as I would like. Like
Mhm.
this is one of the reasons why I want to own land, Brie, because I'm like, I need to
Yeah.
be able to go outside and not think about anything that I have
Right.
to do. Like literally just go
Right.
outside and walk. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know where
Yeah.
I'm going. I'm just because
Yeah.
I realize that's a helpful way for me to recharge.
Yes, yes, it is. And I'll say this, and then you go ahead and move us on for real. But I will say this couple things. Number one, I was in therapy, group therapy one time with a group of people that have the same personalities like
Mhm.
as me. And one of the things that he encouraged me specifically to do was to go home, get a coloring book, get a crayon, and to color outside of the lines, like as if you were a kid,
Yeah.
basically. And I remember him saying this to me. He goes, color like when you were a kid outside of the lines. And I go, first of all, I didn't color outside the lines when I was a kid. Like, just so you
Right.
know, like
Exactly.
I
And so that one
colored all
energy.
the way around, all before I colored in, just to make sure I didn't stay outside. So
Yes.
I started incorporating this and I do it very sporadically, but every now and then I'll get this coloring book. I got my crayons. I bought me a big old thing of crayons that my parents couldn't afford when I was a kid. So now I'm like, trying to, live this life that I didn't, I
Uh-huh.
don't know why.
Redeem the time.
But,
Redeem
and
the time.
I'm just saying. And I color with my left hand with
Oh,
no
wow.
intent other than to just color. Like I color with my weaker
Yep.
hand and just as a relaxation. And there's nothing that comes out of it besides my brain unraveling a little bit, like from all the tightness of the day and the work and all that, or whatever. And so, anyways, I'll say that. Second thing that I want to say, when you talk about going outside in nature, I heard this on a podcast one time and was like, that makes so much sense. When you step outside of your house or your job and you go in nature and you actually allow yourself to just be in nature, go for a walk, look at the sky, whatever the case may be, what it does is it reminds you how big God is and how small you are. And so it helps to minimize those things that maybe feel like really big issues in your mind. I was
Yeah.
at one time, I heard this podcast at a time that I was having really hard time with a staff member that was reporting to me. And it was like everything all day I was consumed with thinking about how to deal with this person. And I heard that podcast and I would start going for jogs and walks outside. And it was a way for me to say, if my God can create the sky, like,
Yeah.
and all these trees and all these blades of grass, and look at how expansive this world is. This situation is not as big as what my mind is telling me
Mhm.
that it is. And so it helps
Mhm.
you to kind of just step outside of everyday life and see the awe of who God is,
Yeah.
So it's a very wise decision to make, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. And I'm taking your advice. Then you have been welcome to an episode of Rest with Brie with Brie Davis. but but anyway,
Hey, I believe in it. My
listen,
husband
listen.
and I named our Wi-Fi at home Rest. And the reason for that is because this is what we want our home to be, a place where people can rest.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow. That's powerful. So let's move on a little bit. You have rested a lot. But I think that you probably have tried to figure out how to be effective in this time. I mean, obviously, we talked about this earlier. We're still kind of in the middle of a pandemic, even though people are getting their shots and, people are states are starting to open up and, people have different opinions about that, but people are starting to kind of move forward in some ways. How have you worked to remain sharp and relevant in this time? Because I'll tell you, for me, this last year or so, I thought to myself, well, as a fellow introvert, I'm like, nobody's going to be demanding something from me at this time, right?
Mhm.
I literally, my mindset was, Lee, you could just go out and do some stuff that you just feel like you just need to do to make yourself better or grow in some ways. Like, how have you used this time to not put pressure on yourself and just like really, really stay key in or actually grow in some ways personally?
Yeah. Well, one thing for our church, this has totally changed a lot of what we do. We were already an online church, but we grew, I think maybe even tripled or quadrupled in the amount of people watching our services online over the past year. Exactly. So even though as an introvert, we weren't having services on the weekend in person. And that, took a little bit of challenge from my job away. A whole new challenge showed up with how do we present the word of God in a relevant and effective way online, knowing that people can literally only see us from a screen. How are we going to
Yeah.
do that? On top of the fact that even though we weren't, doing service as normal, we were still needing to hire people because we have more people watching us. That means we have more people giving. So we need to hire more people in finance.
Yeah.
Because we have our doors closed, we want to do a lot of renovations in our building before people come back. So we had to hire people in expansion and facilities and hire people in ministries and connections, because now we need to know how we disciple people from their homes, basically, all those, hire people in experience, production, because now we want our production and our presentation and experience every on the weekend to be like one that's unforgettable. So
Yeah.
how do we do that? So really, I would say that this past year caused me as a leader and our organization to grow in ways that we've never had to do over the past since
Yeah.
I've been on staff. And so anyways, I think that we didn't get a chance to kind of like, lean back and cross our arms kind of thing during this at all. It was like, go, 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 figure out how to do it. How do we
Yeah.
stay cutting edge? How do we stay relevant? All those different things, because we believe in what it is that we are offering, which is a relationship with God. We had to change in order to attract people into that.
Yeah.
And so anyways, yeah, I think that we've had to do a lot of shifting of our minds in our systems, in order to reach the people, the new people now that we have engaged in what's happening at Transformation Church. The other thing I'll say is one of the things of this past year is growing in staff and growing in leadership at our church, is that I've had to learn how to coach people more than execute the job. And
Yeah.
that's a major shift for me, because I'm a doer. So like, I like being involved in the weeds of things. I like knowing, okay, well, from conception all the way to implementation, what are we going to do? I want to be involved in all of that. And I no longer have the ability to do that, because my responsibility has grown in protecting and caring for our church and for our lead pastors. And so I've now had to offset a lot of those things and on top of that, it's just a sheer amount of staff that we have. I cannot be in the weeds of everything because there's too much going on. So personally, I've had to learn how to differentiate between things that I have to do and things I really want to do, but I don't have to do. And I need to coach somebody else up on how to do it. And so that's been a major, major thing for me, is giving away things that maybe have been near and dear to my heart, to trusting our staff and our leadership to be able to do those things well as God has called them to do.
Yeah. The only thing I would say as it relates to that is, I think it's freeing you up to be more available.
Yeah.
But I think that's really, really powerful, Brie, but and helpful for people to think about. And I think a lot of people struggle with this, because when you are the founder of something, when you have created something, it or you're involved in the creation or the formation of something, it's tough when people don't do right by it. And you start having moments like, that's not even my vid, and that gets very difficult, and so I think that plays a big role in how people operate, and what challenges people to move forward in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I agree. I think you cannot grow unless you allow other people to take on responsibility, period. You
Yeah.
just can't, because I have to now be more elevated thinking in my leadership, which means that if I'm going down into the weeds of a thing, then I am literally lowering myself and everyone else around me to do that. And so, yeah, you have to trust. This is another way you rest in God, is to trust the people that He put around you, and to trust your leadership and know your leadership enough to know that you'll discern who the people are that need to have different responsibilities, as well as you'll discern when it's time for them to stop and somebody else.
That's great.
Okay. Okay.
I think that's a really, really healthy for us to understand. So my next question for you is, what are some of the advice would you give to people who are trying to grow what they're doing, who are trying to grow professionally? There are people that listen to this and watch this that may not necessarily start an organization or be an entrepreneur or lead a particular organization. They just may be an employee who's trying to be better, right? What are some advice
Mhm.
would you give to people on how to flourish and how to grow and what they want to do and what they are doing right now?
Yeah. I think number one, community is great. I think that asking people around, where do you think I need to grow professionally? Where do you think I need to grow emotionally, personally? And allowing people, trusted individuals around you to speak into that. I think that that's huge. I think asking yourself, where do I desire to grow? Because the Bible tells us, if you delight yourself in the Lord, He'll give you the desires of your heart. I think that number one, that means that sometimes He helps us to see desires come to life in our lives. But also, I think that that means that sometimes literally gives you desires. He
Yeah.
implants desires in your heart that are only God desires, because you wouldn't want that on your own. So
Yeah.
asking yourself, what do I desire? Where do I desire to grow? And then you have to do your work. You have to study that thing. You
Yeah.
have to call people and ask them questions about somebody that's doing it well, ask them questions about it. You have to listen to podcasts, read books, pray about it, and ask the Holy Spirit to give you insight on it. All those different things you have to do. I don't believe that growth automatically happens. I believe growth is cultivated in
Yeah.
good soil. And
Yeah.
good soil is us going and, putting ourselves in a position to learn and to do the work in our own lives. And so, yeah, I think that community, asking yourself, what do you desire? And then go for it. Just learn.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to be a leader that's stuck. And by that, I mean, I don't want to ever get to a place where I think I know it all. I want to be a student of life and of leadership. I want to be a student of the people around me.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, then I get stuck.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's so good. And I'm not gonna comment on that because it'll prolong
okay.
the time. But I think you kind of led it even into the next question. What are some of the things that you're listening to or what you're reading right now? Because I know if other people can have ways to do it, I think people should know like what is Brie Davis doing to stay sharp and grow in that way through reading and maybe listening to certain things.
So I listen to a lot of podcasts,
Yeah.
and I told you
Me
that
too.
I'd rather listen to podcasts than music in my car, honestly.
Same.
So some of the podcasts I listen to are Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership. That's a really good one. There's another one called Typology. It's about the Enneagram. And then there's another one called Restoring the Soul. And I love that podcast too. That's all about different things, but it talks a lot about how do we get back to who God originally called us to be, even though we've experienced traumas and issues and betrayal and all kinds of stuff like that, whatever. So those are three that I listen to on a regular basis outside of sermons, Transformation Church, Elevation. Love listening to sermons, learning about, the word of God. And you said, what am I reading? Okay. I'm reading a book right now that's honestly rocking my socks. It is called Getting the Love That You Want. I know that sounds, I don't know why I say that. I rock my socks. But
The
anyway.
great phrase.
This book is called Getting the Love That You Want. And I believe the author's last name is Hendricks. Maybe that might be his first or last name. I'm listening to the audiobook right now, and it is actually all about romantic relationships. So I'm reading it specifically for me and my marriage, and how we look for our inner child to be healed through romance. And so it's all
Wow.
about going back through your history. Yeah. It's all about how we usually put our romantic partner in the place of our parents and ask them to heal things that happen in our childhood. And so I literally I listen to the audiobook and I read the iBook at the same time because I want to highlight, but I want to hear them saying it to me.
Wow.
And I've had to on several occasions stop, take a break from it, because it's taken me a while to get through it because it's so deep. Like it's so,
Wow.
yeah, it's nutting me like a fish right now. So
That's real. That's a
yeah,
good
that's
book.
what I'm reading
That's
right
a good
now.
book. That's a good
Mhm.
book. Well, I hope people actually go and check that book out and also listen to it because I think that would help with the, pace.
Yeah.
So my second to last question for you is, how are you, Brie Davis, paying it forward?
Um, well, I here's what I'll say. Personally, I believe that God has asked me to pay for my entire life. So as of recently, I've been studying a lot on generosity and how God is asking me to be generous with what He's placed in my hands. About a month ago, my husband and I moved into a new house, and the house is only the two of us live here, but we have 5 bedrooms in the house, and that is intentional to create a resting place for other people.
Wow.
So I believe that we've been called to host retreats. I believe
Wow.
that we've been called to host families in our home, to host other pastors and leaders in our home. And we have, literally placed our whole life into this outside of, what we do in our everyday 9 to 5 jobs. We believe that God has asked us to create a resting place for people. And so that's one way that's probably the main way right now that I feel like God's asked us to pay it forward. We had a very We've only been married 6 years. We had a very rocky beginning of our marriage, and we have gotten to just this place of peace and calm in our relationship and in our love and in our home. And we believe that God's asked us to offer that to other people. So yeah, that's where we are right now.
Wow. I just to say this real quick, I think our experiences are testimonies of the goodness of God, but they're also opportunities that God uses in our lives to impact others.
Oh,
I don't think
yes.
anything we've experienced is just for us. I think that has stuck in my mind for so many years now. Even some of my childhood trauma, some of the things that I experienced as a child, it is for my heart to have a certain posture so that when I see certain things, I'm quick to deal with it. I'm quick to
Yes.
address it. I mean, this past week, I know this is going to come out later, but this past week when Christine Kane spoke at TC, she has impacted me so much because the part of our stories in some ways are similar in having experienced abuse as a child, right? And seeing how she's produced so much, it encourages somebody like me who's like, oh yeah, I can do this. I can be impactful. I can go out and do something significant in the world and it be what God called me to do, and it doesn't have to be on the scale that what she's doing, but it encourages me to recognize my own personal significance at whatever level that I'm supposed to be significant.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Agreed.
So, my last question for you, and we're gonna get out of here, Brie. I mean, you dropped so many
This
gems.
is good fun, Lee. I've had a great time.
Yes, I've enjoyed talking to you. But my last and final question is, what song will you use to describe yourself and why?
Oh Lord. Okay.
Uh-huh. I'm gonna
Okay. I am this is hard. Okay, number one. But I'm going to go with a song that I've just been listening to a lot recently, and I have to find the name. I'm so sorry. I'm realizing how bad I am with names and stuff.
It's okay. Listen, there's a bunch of songs that I hear on commercials that I'm like, this song is a jam, but I have no clue who sings it.
So, okay, I've been listening to CeCe Winans' newest album, and yes, I love CeCe. She just has such a purity in her voice. It's so beautiful. Anyways, there's a song that she has called Shepherd.
Okay.
And it kind of starts slow, but then it gets to this point where it's kind of speeding up or whatever. And it says, my life is better, so much better when I am following you. And I genuinely feel that way. Like, I genuinely feel like I am 100% living the good life because of my relationship with God. And that has, the more and more that I tailor my yes to be obedient to him, the more and more I realign myself to, seek his will and walk in his will for my life just gets better and better. It literally, I feel like I'm 100% fully alive and living the abundant life in Christ. I believe that.
Yeah.
Well, so, Brie, that's what I'll say.
Yeah. Well, Brie, thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I know that people are going to be inspired by your story and the things that you have to share. So thank you for teaching us and talking to us about managing movements and actually how success looks in just holistically in life. So thank you, Brie, for being on.
Thank you so much for having me, Lee. This was absolutely incredible. I had a great time.
Thank you. Thank you for watching and or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee. If you have not done it yet, subscribe today on YouTube and all podcasting platforms. To get more information about me and what I'm doing, email me at scottconsultations@gmail.com or follow me on social media on Twitter and especially Instagram at Lee A. Scott II or Lee A. Scott II. Thank you for watching this week's episode. I really appreciate it. Much love, and let's get started.